Bob Mueller is filing his final move against Paul Manafort tonight, making the case for a long jail sentence as news breaks that separately New York prosecutors may indict Manafort within weeks on charges that Donald Trump cannot pardon. All that, plus there is this late news right now about the Mueller report itself. Let me show you the scene here. It all seems quiet at the Justice Department, but the DOJ is doing something that is not quiet at all, something it almost never does. Tonight, the Justice Department is now talking about when Bob Mueller will finish his Russia probe. In fact, today's late afternoon announcement was a clear response to recent reports that suggested maybe Mueller's report would be imminent. Well, not so fast. The DOJ is telling reporters now those reports are wrong and that the DOJ under Bill Barr will not get the Mueller report by the end of next week. If you follow the news, you know already just that alone is a contrast to DOJ's usual silence about Mueller's endgame, which is what we mostly saw under Rosenstein, Sessions, and Whitaker. And it all comes as top Democrats now from 6 congressional committees are demanding the new AG Bill Barr release the entire Mueller report whenever he does get it. Now, Bob Mueller must also file his Manafort sentencing memo tonight. So if that breaks during this program, I promise we will cover it for you live and everything that's in it. It must detail why Manafort's confessed crimes are, in the views of the special counsel, so bad that he should face up to 10 more years in jail. And as mentioned, Manafort faces the prospect of extra separate jail time because now New York prosecutors are reportedly preparing these separate charges for tax and banking crimes. Some have referred to it as an insurance policy if Donald Trump pardons Manafort. Those charges could actually come within weeks, according to a new story in the New York Times today. Also tonight, as if that wasn't enough, reporting that Michael Cohen gave federal prosecutors, again in New York, new incriminating material about how Donald Trump's family business runs, that he did that as recently as last month, and that story just breaking tonight. So let me give you the bottom line state of play. We have a big show. Here's the state of play in the Mueller Friday that we're living through. The Manafort filing, imminent tonight. Michael Cohen, still talking, prosecutors using the material. And now the DOJ under Bill Barr, departing from recent tradition to discuss at least the timing of the end of this Mueller probe. In just a moment, I have a one-on-one with Neil Katyal, the DOJ official who literally wrote the rules that govern Mueller. That will be worthwhile. But because of the unusual night we have, I go first to NBC's Julia Ainsley, who is live on this Friday evening in front of the Justice Department. I want to ask you, what does it mean that we heard the DOJ talk about the timing for the end of the Mueller probe, something they don't usually do?
Yeah, Ari, I think you're smart to put that into context here. Just because we're finding out we're not getting news doesn't mean that there's not a little bit of news here. We know that this Justice Department has been silent when it comes to anything that it's getting about Robert Mueller. And this is, of course, where Robert Mueller has to report. He has to report to the Attorney General, not Congress, on his findings. So that's why it's so important what they do here, because they will determine what the public and Congress ultimately see. So today we had reporters here. We have trucks outside, different networks ready to go just in case this news broke, because, as you know, several had reported that it could come as soon as today or definitely sometime in the next week. And I was told today by a senior Justice Department official, which was somewhat out of the norm, that is definitely not coming next week, which means they know, or they at least have an idea of when it might come.
Yeah, that's my last question to you. When you get a senior official there who now works for Bill Barr saying it's not the end of next week, that also means it's not the end of next year. They know something.
Yeah, that's right. They've had to work with the special counsel's office to coordinate this handoff. They know how important this is. We're talking about the president of the United States and his campaign and whether or not they colluded with a foreign power. They understand the stakes here. And so at this point, they want to be, I think, a little more transparent than they have been in the past. I even pushed that official, Ari. I said, are you saying you just don't expect it next week? Like maybe you haven't gotten a call from Mueller's office yet? And they said, no, we can say with certainty it is not going to come next week, which to me says that they know, at least, if not a date, they at least know things that need to happen before they get it.
Julia Ainsley, we'll be checking back with you constantly as needed in the coming days and weeks. Thank you. I turn now to former U.S. Solicitor General Neil Katyal, who, as I mentioned, wrote the Mueller rules. Mr. Katyal, it's rare that I would go anywhere before you for this topic, but we had to go to a reporter standing in front of the Justice Department building where you worked because this has changed hour by hour. When you see Bill Barr put out this unusual guidance that, hey, Mueller's not done at the end of next week, what does it mean?
Well, I think it's just so much speculation, Ari. It's really who knows when this report is coming out. I mean, it's kind of like trying to figure out what's in Donald Trump's head. It's just kind of one of those, as Justice Kennedy says, sweet mystery of life. You know, we don't know. I mean, on the theory, you know, the arguments for why the report will come out soon are basically as follows. Right now, there are multiple different nodes of investigation. It's not just Mueller. It's the Southern District, U.S. Attorney's Office. It's Congress, various committees. It's also state attorneys general. So Mueller doesn't necessarily need to carry all of these prosecutions and investigations through the way he might have 19 months ago. So that's the argument for why he could file a final report and step aside and turn it over. On the other hand, we keep learning that there are new crimes that are allegedly committed by Trump and the coterie of people around him. And so, you know, and even when the crimes are discovered, like with Manafort, and they plead guilty to them, they then lie during the plea. So, you know, that's stretched things out, and it's also expanded the scope of the investigation as well.
If the rules that you wrote that Bob Mueller's operating under, if they don't mandate a public report, help people understand what is likely if Mueller does hand Bill Barr some information, then what?
Right. So I think, in effect, they do mandate a public report. So there are two reports in the special counsel regulations that are required. One is the more comprehensive report that Mueller has to give to Barr at the conclusion of his investigation. He has to provide a summary of everything he did and the conclusions he reached. And then second, there has to be a report from Barr, the Attorney General, to the Congress. That can be briefer, but notably, it does have to include any instance in which the Attorney General or his predecessors, like that fake acting Attorney General Whitaker, if they overruled Mueller on anything. In that report, there is a provision in the special counsel regulations to make that report public. And so I very much expect that the Barr report to Congress will be made public.
And do you think Bill Barr is buying time here because of his knowledge of what's in the report, what we're calling a report, the material that Mueller gives him? Or is it more broad, that even if he hasn't been fully briefed on every detail, he saw a lot of coverage here, CNN, Washington Post, and others basically saying this is coming any day, and he just doesn't want to be living under that pressure?
Well, I think it could be any of those explanations. It also could be that Mueller himself isn't ready to turn in a report. I do think whenever that report happens, though, when Mueller gives it to Barr, I do think Barr will notify Congress right away under the regulations that there has been a report. But at the same time, I don't think necessarily that Barr is going to turn over his own report to Congress immediately, because there may be privilege concerns, grand jury material, sources and methods, you know, that will require, you know, a short amount of time for Barr to evaluate.
We are very much benefited by the insight you gather for us here, Neil. As I sometimes remind viewers, the rules are going to mandate a lot of what happens in the next few weeks. The great rapper Nas once said it was written. In the case of the special counsel rules, it was written by you, and we'll be coming back to you, I hope. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We turn to another great expert, one by one, former federal prosecutor Barbara McQuade, a professor at the University of Michigan Law School. I happen to go there undergrad, and am always fondly looking at the pictures of the Law Quad you post from time to time on the internet. Good evening.
Thanks, Ari. Go Blue.
Go Blue. There's so much going on. We just went through it as meticulously as possible. We don't usually begin this show, as I mentioned, with a reporter in front of Main Justice on Friday night, but it's that kind of night. And I promise if the Manafort sentencing memo comes in, I'll be asking you about that the moment we get it. When you look at all of this together, the reports that Michael Cohen dishes on new information in New York, Manafort sentencing, state charges against Manafort, Roger Stone in trouble, given a warning that if he messes up again, he's going to be messing up in jail. And then Bill Barr comes out tonight and chooses to say that which he does not need to, that it's not done next week. What's on your mind? Tell us what you're thinking, because we're all trying to make sense of this.
Yeah, well, it is very unusual, as you said, to announce anything that the special counsel is doing or not doing unless they felt great pressure to correct the record. And there's been so much reporting that the report is coming next week. I think they felt some obligation to set the record straight. But in light of all the things that are happening with Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, and some other loose ends. Remember, there is this matter where there was a subpoena to a foreign-owned corporation that has not yet been resolved. It seems likely that they know that there are a few loose ends that they need to tie up before they're going to issue that final report. You know, people used to ask me all the time, when do you think this case will be done? And the correct answer was almost always, I don't know, because until you exhaust everything that Michael Cohen knows, or until you look through all of the material that was taken out of Roger Stone's homes during those search warrants, and until you get the documents that have been subpoenaed by that foreign corporation, it's difficult to know if there is anything fruitful in there that you need to use in your case. And so it may very well be that they're very close to the end, but they don't know when the end will come until they've exhausted all of those investigative leads.
All fair points. Take a listen to the president discussing all of this. Here you go.
Have you spoken with Bill Barr about the release of the Mueller report? Have you spoken
No, I have
about
not.
that? You've
No,
said nothing to him
I
about
have
it.
not.
Do you expect to?
At some point, I guess I'll be talking about it. But you know the nice part? There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. There was no anything.
The president recently has struck a much calmer tone about this. He's putting a lot of faith in Bill Barr. What do you make of that before I let you go?
I don't know. It could be that Bill Barr knows what's going on and is communicating that with President Trump and knows that the ultimate conclusion will be beneficial to President Trump. It may be he just feels more confident having Bill Barr there, his appointee, that he thinks will protect him as he has demanded from prior attorneys general. I don't know. It's difficult to predict how things are going to come out. But I suppose, at the very least, he knows that it is likely that the Justice Department under Bill Barr will comply with that DOJ guidance not to charge a sitting president, and so that any remedy against the president will be a political one through impeachment. And so maybe he has more confidence that that is that the lack of criminal charges is the likely outcome under Bill Barr.
Interesting. We'll be keeping tabs on it. Barbara McQuade, thanks for joining us this Friday.
Thanks, Ari.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.